What if Benjen Stark returned from beyond the wall and told Jon Snow the truth? Ned Stark died to protect. Let's explore the depths of it in the video. The wall stretches 700 feet above the world, and Jon Snow stands at the top of it in the dark. The wind comes off the haunted forest in long, bitter waves. Ghost sits at Jon's left side, the dire wolf's white fur pulled flat by the cold red eyes fixed on the tree line below. Jon does not look at the trees. He looks at the sky. It is a vast and moonless black, pricked with stars, and it tells him nothing. 3 days ago he was dead. He does not know what to do with that. He does not know what to do with any of it. He has quit the Night's Watch. He has no vows left. He has no name that feels right in his mouth. Below, to the south, Castle Black burns with torchlight. He can hear men settling in for the night. Davos is down there, and Melisandre is down there. He does not want to look at any of them. The top of the wall is the one place no one follows. Ghost presses his long head against Jon's thigh. Jon sets a hand on the wolf's skull, without thinking. Then the horn blows, one blast, a ranging party returning. Jon straightens, but there is something wrong with the sound of it. It is too sharp, too urgent. He moves to the edge and looks down at the base of the wall, where the south gate opens into the tunnel. A figure on the ramparts below raises a torch and shouts upward. Jon cannot make out the words over the wind. He can make out the direction the man is pointing. North, into the trees. Something is coming out of the haunted forest alone. Jon descends. The tunnel through the wall is a long throat of ice, and the cold inside it is absolute. Jon moves fast through it, Ghost keeping pace at his shoulder. He comes out the north gate, into the wind-blasted clearing between the wall and the tree line. And the first thing he sees is the torch, a single flame, held low to the ground, moving toward him through the darkness at a walking pace. The horse beneath the rider is dark. The rider is still, upright, dressed in black furs streaked with frost. Davos is already there, standing 10 feet from the gate with 4 men behind him. All of them armed, and none of them moving. He glances at Jon as Jon comes through. "He asked for you by name," Davos says. "About an hour ago, we watched from the ramparts until we were sure he was alone." The rider stops at the edge of the torchlight. The horse does not steam. That is the first thing Jon notices. A horse ridden hard in cold air should steam. This one does not. The man on it sits without moving, without the small adjustments and fidgets of a living rider. His face, when the light touches it, is pale in a way that has nothing to do with cold. The skin is tight. The eyes are dark and alive, but the face around them has the quality of something preserved rather than something living. Jon. The voice is real. It is familiar. It reaches back into Jon's childhood like a hand. Jon steps forward past Davos. The rider looks down at him. Benjen Stark, first ranger of the Night's Watch, missing since 298 AC, has the face of a dead man who is still breathing. A flaming flail hangs at his saddle. He looks like a man caught between the living and the dead. "Uncle," Jon says, "I cannot come further." Benjen's voice is even, unhurried, the voice of a man who has thought carefully about every word he intends to say. "I cannot cross south of the wall. You know what I am now. You will have heard the shape of it, at least. The children stopped your turning." Jon has heard Bran's story through pieces and messengers. The account, relayed across leagues and time, fragmented but consistent. Dragon glass, in the chest. You're still here, but you're not fully alive. That is the shape of it. Benjen shifts slightly on the horse, and even that movement is wrong, too controlled, no wasted motion. I can ride. I can think. I can feel cold the way stone feels cold. I have been in the north for 5 years, John. The children's network is older than the wall. They showed me things. Benjen looks at him a long moment. Behind John, Davos has not moved. Ghost presses against the back of John's knee and holds. They showed me a tower in dawn, Benjen says. They showed me a woman in a bed of blood. They showed me my brother Ned, kneeling, making a promise to a dying girl. The wind crosses between them. John does not speak. She was not taken. Benjen says, Lyanna was not abducted. She went willingly with Rhaegar Targaryen. They rode south together, and they were married in dawn, before a heart tree, with Septon Maynard as witness. The marriage was real. It was legitimate. She loved him. She chose it. John does not move. Ghost holds still at his knee. The torchlight throws long shadows across the snow. Rhaegar annulled his first marriage to marry her. Benjen continues. He set aside Elia Martell. The Septon recorded it all, at the Citadel in Old Town. The journal still exists. John. When Lyanna gave birth at the Tower of Joy, the child she bore was legitimate. He was not a bastard. He was a Targaryen prince. Stop. John's voice comes out harder than he means it. Benjen stops. John walks 2 steps away and then turns back. Say what you mean. Say the whole thing. You are Aegon Targaryen, Benjen says. 6th of his name. The legitimate son of Crown Prince Rhaegar Targaryen and Lady Lyanna Stark. Ned Stark was not your father. He was your protector. He gave you his name and his shame and his silence, because the alternative was your death. No. John steps back. You were dead in the north for 5 years, and something changed you. And now you're telling me a story that the Tower of Joy stands in the mountains of dawn, Benjen says. His voice does not rise. It stays even, patient, carrying. Ned rode there with 6 companions. Howland Reed was among them. 3 of the Kingsguard held the tower. Not the Red Keep, not King's Landing. A tower in dawn. Ask yourself why the Kingsguard were not with the king. Ask yourself why 3 of the finest knights in Westeros were guarding a woman in a tower at the edge of the kingdom. John does not answer. Ser Arthur Dayne led them, Benjen says, the sword of the morning, the finest swordsman of his generation. He and 2 others held that tower against Ned and 6 men. Only 2 of those 8 survived, Ned Stark and Howland Reed. Arthur Dayne died there. 6 good men died there. Your mother was in that room, John, dying from the birth. She made Ned swear to protect you. That is why he took you north. That is why he let the realm believe you were his bastard. Robert Baratheon would have killed you without hesitation. Robert ordered Daenerys killed when she was still a young girl across the sea. He would have put a sword through a child. Ned knew. John stands in the cold. Ghost is very still. The torchlight pulls back and forth with the wind. Howland Reed is alive, Benjen says. He lives at Greywater Watch. He was in that tower. He heard the promise. You do not have to take my word for any of this. Go to Howland Reed and ask him what happened at the Tower of Joy. Ask him who the woman was and who the child was, and what Ned Stark swore on his life to protect. He will tell you the truth. The eyes are alive. The rest of him is not. He tries to find something dishonest there, and does not find it. Why now? John says. Because Robert is dead, Benjen says. He died 4 years ago, and the world has been burning since. Because you are walking toward a war that will change everything. and you are walking into it, not knowing who you are, because the Night King is real, and his army is real, and the realm is going to need something it has never had before, because you needed to know this before you made yourself into something permanent. He pauses. And because you are the last of my sister, I could not leave the truth buried with her. The torch in Benjen's hand has burned steady through all of it. Now he shifts the reins, and the horse turns. I cannot stay, Benjen says. I cannot cross south. I rode here because the children showed me, and because you are family, and because the dead do not stop marching while the living quarrel over names. He looks down at Jon one more time. Your name is Aegon Targaryen. Your mother loved your father and died asking a good man to protect you. The rest of it is yours to carry. I am sorry I cannot carry it with you. He turns north. The torch moves away through the dark, steady and small, until the haunted forest swallows it. Jon stands at the open gate for a long time. The wall is behind him. The night is ahead of him. Ghost presses hard against his leg and does not move. Jon sets his hand on the direwolf's head and feels the warmth of it and tries to remember what his name is. He does not know. Jon does not sleep. He sits in the small room off the main hall that serves as his quarters in Castle Black, with the fire burning low and Ghost stretched across the stone floor at his feet. And he turns the name over in his mind, the way a man turns a stone, to see what is underneath it. Rhaegar Targaryen. Jon knows what the realm says about Rhaegar Targaryen. He has heard it from stable boys and soldiers and lords who remembered the rebellion. The story is always the same. Rhaegar took a northern girl from Harrenhal and carried her away against her will. She was Ned Stark's sister. Robert Baratheon crossed the Trident to get her back, and when Rhaegar's blood ran into that river, the whole Targaryen dynasty ran with it. That is the story. Jon has believed it, as simply as he has believed anything. Now Benjen Stark, pale and half dead, and burning with something that is not entirely alive, has ridden to the wall in the dark to tell Jon the story was wrong. Lyanna went willingly. She was married before a heart tree with a septon as witness. The child she bore in a tower in Dorne was legitimate, was real, was him. Jon turns this over, and it does not settle. He does not know where to put it. The fire drops to coals. Ghost lifts his great white head, watches Jon, and sets it back down. Rhaegar Targaryen, his father, a man who has been dead for 20 years, killed before Jon was old enough to hold a sword, killed by the man whose best friend raised Jon in his place. Jon tries to picture the face and cannot. He has no portrait, no memory, no single word the man ever said to him. He is made of this man's blood, and he knows nothing about him beyond what his enemies chose to tell. He sits with that until the fire goes cold. Davos comes at dawn. He does not knock. He opens the door, looks at Jon, and reads the situation without asking. He pulls a stool close to the dead hearth and sits. He is a compact, careful man. Davos Seaworth, with the fingers of his left hand shortened where Stannis once took them as punishment for smuggling. He waits. Jon tells him. He tells it plainly, without softening it, the same way Benjen told it. Lyanna willing, the marriage real, the journal at the citadel, the name at the end of it, Aegon Targaryen, 6th of his name. Davos listens to all of it. When Jon finishes, the room is quiet for a long moment. How certain are you, Davos says, that what came out of that forest was actually your uncle, and not something wearing his face? I know his voice, Jon says. Davos turns this over. And you believe him. I don't know what I believe. That is the problem. Davos sits forward with his elbows on his knees. He is a man who has made his peace with complicated things before. A man who followed Stannis Baratheon to the Wall and beyond, because he believed in something larger than what was comfortable. He looks at Jon the way he has always looked at Jon, with plain concern and no flattery. The realm doesn't need another Targaryen claim, Davos says. It needs unity. The North is barely held together. The Lannisters are in the south. Daenerys Targaryen is across the sea with dragons, and there is an army of dead men marching toward the wall. Targaryen heir showing up in the middle of all that is not a solution. It is a new problem. I know. Do you? Because you have a look like a man about to do something with this. I'm going to find Howland Reed, Jon says, before any army marches, before I say a word of this to anyone else. I need to know if Benjen's account is true. Howland was there. He was in that tower. He heard the promise Ned made. If he confirms it, then I will decide what it means. If he denies it, I never speak of it again. And if he confirms it. Jon does not answer that. He does not have an answer yet. The door opens. Melisandre stands in the frame, red robes still perfect in the early grey light, the ruby at her throat catching what little warmth the morning offers. She is a tall woman, ageless in the way that has always unsettled Jon, and her eyes have the look of someone who arrived at a conclusion some time ago and has been waiting for the world to catch up. I heard him arrive, she says, last night, from the ramparts. She comes into the room without being invited. Ghost does not move, but his red eyes track her. I knew what he was. I have seen men in that condition before, north of the Wall, where the old powers linger. She looks at Jon directly. I also knew why he came. Then you know to keep it to yourself, Jon says. The Lord of Light showed me a great fire, she says. He showed me a man reborn in salt and smoke. He showed me darkness driven back by a single flame. I prayed for years to understand what that flame was. She pauses. A Targaryen raised as a Stark, resurrected by fire. The prophecy of Azor Ahai speaks of one who will be reborn amidst salt and smoke to wake dragons from stone and forge the burning sword that drives back the long night. She says it, without drama, as a statement of fact. The signs were there from the beginning. I simply did not know how deep the roots ran. I am not your prophecy, Jon says. I am not anyone's prophecy. I am going to find out if what Benjen told me is true, and I am going to take back Winterfell, and that is the sum of what I know right now. And if it is true, keep it to yourself. Each word separate. Whatever you think you know, whatever the fire shows you, you say nothing to anyone. Not to Davos, not to Sansa when she arrives, not to any man or woman in this castle. Swear it. Then she says, I swear it. Jon watches her go. He turns back to the cold hearth. You don't trust that, Davos says. No. He barely has time to think before the horn sounds from the south gate. Sansa Stark arrives at Castle Black with Brienne of Tarth at her side, and the look of a woman who has survived something she should not have survived. She is tall and red-haired, built like their mother in ways that Jon remembers without meaning to, and when she sees him across the yard, she stops walking. Just for a moment, then. She comes forward, and Jon goes forward, and they hold each other in the cold of the yard with the wall at their backs. Jon does not let go for a long time. He has not held his sister since the day they left Winterfell. That was 4 years ago. They are different people standing in the same shapes they were as children. And the reunion is real and warm, and Jon also knows, pressing his face against her red hair, that she does not know who he is. She thinks she is holding her half-brother, her father's bastard, the boy who grew up sideways to the rest of the Stark children, tolerated and loved, but never fully claimed. She is holding someone else. He has not worked out what to call that person yet. They eat together that evening. Sansa, Jon, Brienne, Davos, Tormund Giantsbane watching from a corner with the careful wariness he gives to Southerners. Sansa speaks plainly. She tells Jon about Ramsay Bolton, about what was done to her at Winterfell, about Theon Greyjoy, who was once her father's ward and became something broken, and then, somehow, chose to help her escape. She tells Jon that Rickon is alive somewhere in the north, that Ramsay has him, or knows where he is, that the North will not follow Jon into battle on its own authority. They need Stark blood on the Stark seat. Jon listens to all of it. He watches her face across the table and thinks, with a clarity that feels cold and wrong, that she is the truest Stark between them. She has Ned's blood pure and uncut. Whatever he is something else. We need to take back our home, Sansa says. She does not say it as a plea. She says it as a simple fact. One the room has not yet caught up to. Ramsay will not release Winterfell willingly. We fight for it. Yes, Jon says. She looks at him with something in her eyes that he cannot quite read. Relief, perhaps, or the surprise of a woman who prepared for an argument and did not get one. Whatever I am, he says, and he means it to land only as the simple statement it is. Winterfell is home. I'll fight for it. After she goes to sleep, Jon sits alone again with Ghost at his feet and the fire burning and the weight of the day pressing down. Rhaegar's blood runs in his veins. He has a name he has never used, a father he never knew, a birthright that could reshape everything he is about to do. And he has a sister who does not know any of it, sleeping 20 feet away in a castle black corridor, who looked at him tonight with the first real hope she has allowed herself in years. He will go to Greywater Watch. He will find Howland Reed. He will hear the truth from the mouth of the one man alive who witnessed it. Then he will decide what it means to be the man who carries it. Jon tells Sansa he has to do something before the army marches. He will not tell her what. She is standing in the corridor, outside the great hall, with her arms crossed and the look of a woman who has learned to identify delays. And she identifies this one immediately. Every week we wait, she says. Ramsay's hold on Winterfell gets stronger. He has men. He has Rickon. He has the castle walls, and every day we give him he uses to make them harder to breach. I know, Jon says. I'll be back in a week. Jon, a week. He holds her gaze. Then we march. She wants to push further, and he can see the moment she decides not to. She knows him well enough to know when an argument will not move him. She turns back into the hall, and he turns toward the stables. And neither of them says what sits between them in that corridor, which is that they are both moving toward the same war, by different roads, and neither of them is fully sure what the other is carrying. Jon rides south with Davos, and no one else. The north gives way to the neck gradually, the hard ground softening and then deepening into bog, the trees thickening and closing overhead, until the sky is a series of gaps between branches rather than a whole thing. The road becomes a track. The track becomes a suggestion. By the second day, there is no road at all, only the channels between stretches of black water, and they leave the horses on firm ground and take a flat-bottomed boat the rest of the way. Davos pulls. He does not ask where they are going. He figured that out 2 days ago. The neck is the narrowest point in Westeros. Bog and crannogs and shifting river channels that has swallowed armies whole. Greywater Watch moves on the water and cannot be found by force. You do not find it. It finds you, if House Reed allows it. House Reed, it seems, is willing. A boat comes out of the mist an hour before dusk, poled by a cranogman who turns without speaking and leads them in. Greywater Watch rises from the water in the failing light. It is a low castle, grey-walled and moss-covered, built on a floating island of peat and timber that bobs slightly when the boat approaches the dock. It looks like something that grew out of the marsh rather than something that was built. It looks like it has always been here and will be here after everything else is gone. A man stands on the dock. Howland Reed is smaller than John expected. He is a slight, compact figure, middle-aged, with the quiet stillness of the neck in his face, the kind of stillness that comes not from calm, but from long practice at watching without being seen. He has dark eyes and grey beginning to show in his hair. He looks at John when the boat touches the dock, and he does not speak for a long moment. John steps onto the dock. "You look like her," Howland says, around the eyes. They go inside. Howland leads them to a small room with a fire and 2 chairs and the smell of peat smoke, and he pours wine that no one drinks, and then sits and folds his hands and waits. John sits across from him. He asks the question plainly. "Were you at the Tower of Joy?" "Yes," Howland says. "Were you there when the woman died?" A pause. Not hesitation. Recognition. As though Howland has been waiting for this question for 20 years and is taking a breath before it arrives. "Yes." "Was the child hers and Rhaegar's?" Howland Reed is quiet for a long time. The fire moves. Outside, the water laps against the floating castle's timber base. Davos stands at the back of the room and does not move. "Yes," Howland says. John sits with that. He has carried Benjen's word for 5 days, turning it over, testing it, and now there is a second voice saying the same thing, and the word has weight now that it did not have before. It is not a theory. It is a fact. It has a witness. "Tell me what you know," John says. Howland tells him. He tells it without embellishment. Ned rode for the Tower of Joy with 6 men. 3 Kingsguard held it, Sir Arthur Dane with his twin blades, and 2 others. Howland was not a swordsman by the standards of that company. He does not describe what he did at the end of the fight. John does not ask. When it was over, Ned was alive and Howland was alive, and 4 of their companions were dead, and Arthur Dane was dead, and the other 2 Kingsguard were dead, and the tower was open. The room at the top held Lyanna Stark in a bed soaked through with blood. She had already given birth, Howland says. The child was there. She was alive when Ned reached her, but not for long. She knew it. He knew it. He stops. Then she made him swear. She said the child's name, the name Rhaegar had given him, and she said to keep it hidden and keep him safe. She said Robert would kill him. She knew Robert well enough to know that. Ned swore it. I heard it. Howland looks at the fire. Then she died and Ned took the boy, and we rode north. Davos does not speak. He named you John, Howland says, close enough to her name that he would remember and no one else would know why. He raised you as his own because that was the promise. He let men believe the worst of him, so no one looked twice at a bastard in Winterfell. A pause. It cost him his wife's trust. It cost him his name among men who thought he fathered you on a stranger. And it cost him the truth on the steps of the Great Sept. He could have said your name and saved himself, and he did not. He chose the promise over himself, Howland says quietly. I think of that often. Howland tells him about the journal. Septon Maynard was present at the wedding, an old man of the cloth who believed in the completeness of records. He wrote down everything. The annulment of Rhaegar's marriage to Elia Martell, the ceremony before the heart tree in Dawn, Lyanna's name and Rhaegar's name together in the record. The journal went to the citadel with Maynard's effects when the old man died. It is in the archive at Old Town. Howland has never gone for it. He did not know who to trust with what it would prove. Someone will find it, Jon says. Eventually, Howland says. Things that are true tend to surface. Howland offers to come, to testify in person. Jon shakes his head. Not yet. He tells Howland what Howland already knows, that the political moment has not arrived, that an army needs to take Winterfell before any throne becomes relevant, that pulling Howland out of the neck before the time is right will only put him in danger and put the testimony at risk. Stay here, Jon says. Be ready. When I send for you, come. Howland nods, as though this was what he expected. They leave at dawn on the flat-bottomed boat, back through the mist and the black water and the closing trees. Davos poles. The marsh is quiet. After an hour, when the first birds start in the trees overhead, Davos asks the question he has been holding since Howland's fire. So what now? Jon watches the water slide past the bow. We take back Winterfell, he says. The rest can wait. You said that already. It's still true. They reach the horses before midday and ride north. Armed, Jon carries the weight of Howland Reed's testimony the same way he has carried everything since the war. Forward, without putting it down. Because the ground does not stop moving long enough to set anything down safely. Castle Black comes into view on the third day. It is smaller than the wall behind it, which is always true, but always surprises him. Sansa meets them in the yard, with the look she has worn since she arrived at Castle Black. Watchful, impatient, doing the arithmetic of the campaign in her head. Well, she says. We march, Jon says. Before she can ask anything else, Tormund comes across the yard with a letter in his hand. He does not look happy about what he is holding. Came from the south this morning, he says, and passes it over. Jon breaks the seal. He does not read all of it. He reads enough. The letter is from Ramsay Bolton, written in the tone of a man who enjoys what he is saying, and it names Rickon Stark. And it describes what Ramsay intends to do to him, and it describes what Ramsay will do to everyone who marches against Winterfell. It is designed to provoke. It succeeds. Jon's hands tighten on the parchment, and he reads the last line twice before he folds it and looks at Sansa. He has Rickon, he says. Sansa's face does not change. She already knew it. She has been living with that knowledge since before she left Winterfell. She has been running toward this problem for months, and now it is here, in his hands, and the campaign is no longer an abstraction. Then we move, she says. Yes, Jon says. He folds the letter. We move. The Northern Lords come to Jon as Stark bannermen, not as subjects of a Targaryen prince. He speaks to them in the great hall of Castle Black, and in the yards of small keeps, and on the windswept grounds of lordships thinned by years of Bolton occupation and red wedding grief. He does not tell them who he is. Hay tells them who they are. The North, with Stark blood on the seat if they fight for it, with Rickon alive somewhere inside Winterfell's walls if they march fast enough. Some come willingly. Some come because the alternative is Ramsay Bolton keeping what he has taken. Some send their young heirs because the lords themselves are too old or too broken by the purges that followed the Red Wedding. It is enough, not the force Jon wanted, but enough to march with. The letter from Ramsay Bolton finds Jon 3 days before the army is ready to move. It is a careful piece of cruelty, written in a hand too controlled for a man who hunts people with his dogs, designed to make Jon furious and make him stupid. Jon reads it once and passes it to Sansa. Sansa reads it and folds it neatly in half and sets it on the table. He has Rickon, she says. Yes. He's using him as bait. Yes. She looks at the folded letter. Her face does not change. She has had years of practice at keeping her face from changing while the world does terrible things. And she is better at it now than she was when she was a girl. We have to try anyway, she says. We have to try anyway, Jon agrees. He cannot sleep the night before the battle. He lies on a hard cot in a field camp south of Castle Black, with the sounds of 10,000 men settling in around him. Fires, the low murmur of men who know that the morning is coming, and stares at the dark above him and turns over every formation and every terrain feature and everything Davos has told him about positioning cavalry on open ground. Sansa comes to his tent an hour before midnight. She stands outside the entrance and does not come in. He goes out. She is standing in the space between tents, where the firelight reaches but does not commit, arms crossed against the cold. And she has the look of a woman who is deciding between two things. Is there anything you're not telling me? Jon asks. About the battle, about what I'm marching into. She looks at him for a long moment. Behind her, somewhere in the camp, a horse shifts and stamps. No, she says. She is lying. He can see it, and he cannot prove it, and he has his own secrets sitting in the locked room inside him. The room where Benjen's voice still echoes, and Howland Reed's quiet yes still rings. She has hers. They stand in the cold between their separate truths, and neither of them opens the door. Don't do anything foolish tomorrow, she says. We need you alive. I know. She goes back to her tent. Jon goes back to his. Neither of them sleeps. The battle begins at dawn, with Ramsay Bolton walking out ahead of his army, with Rickon Stark on a rope. Jon watches from across the field. He knows what is about to happen. He knows it in the same way a man knows a fire is going to burn before he touches it, with the certainty of something that cannot be stopped, only witnessed. Ramsay cuts the rope. He draws a bow. He tells Rickon to run. Rickon runs. He is 11 years old, slight and quick, and he runs in the open field between two armies while Ramsay Bolton shoots arrows at him, one at a time, each one landing just behind his heels. And Jon understands with a cold clarity that this is theatre, that the final arrow is already decided, that Ramsay has planned this ending since before the battle lines were drawn. He understands all of this, and he charges anyway. He rides hard across the field towards his brother, and the last arrow finds Rickon before Jon reaches him. Rickon falls and does not get up, and Jon pulls up his horse with the Bolton cavalry already moving, and for one moment, he is alone in the open field between two armies with a dead boy behind him and 10,000 soldiers ahead of him. Then he draws Longclaw and rides into them. What follows is not strategy. It is survival, stripped to its bones. The Bolton infantry closes around Jon in a press of shields and bodies, and he fights from horseback until the horse is gone, and then he fights on foot in a corridor of dead men that narrows with every minute. He is pressed back and pressed back again, and the shield wall rises around him until there is no sky, only metal, and the grunts of men and the weight of the dead stacking up under his boots. He goes down once, he comes back up. He goes down a second time with a boot on his chest, and the faces of men pressing in above him, and the air being forced out, and he thinks, not of his name, not of Rhaegar or Lyanna, or the secret he is carrying. He thinks of nothing at all. He gets up. He gets up because he is made of stark stubbornness and 20 years of being told he does not belong, and the particular fire of a man who has already died once and found it did not. Take. He gets up because the ground is not ready for him yet. Then, the trumpets sound. They come from the south. Cavalry, banner after banner of the Vale. Littlefinger's army arriving at a gallop into the Bolton rear. The shield wall breaks. The Bolton line shatters. The knights of the Vale pour through the gaps like water through a cracked dam. And Jon lifts his head and watches 10,000 men come apart and knows that someone planned this without telling him. He knows exactly who. Ramsay Bolton breaks for Winterfell. Jon is already running. He catches Ramsay in the yard. And what happens next is not a fight. It is Jon beating Ramsay into the ground with his fists, one blow after another, past the point where Ramsay can stand or speak or do anything at all. He stops when he sees Sansa watching. He stops because she is the one who should finish it. And she knows it, and he knows it, and they do not need to say it. Ramsay is dragged away. His hounds have not eaten in days. The Stark direwolf banners go back up over Winterfell before sunset. Jon watches them from the courtyard, grey and dirty from the battle, with Ghost pressing against his leg as though the wolf has been waiting all day to do it. The banners catch the wind and straighten, and for a moment the castle looks like what it was before the Boltons, before the Greyjoys, before all of it, the home his father built, the home Ned Stark kept for 20 years with no reward beyond the keeping. His father. Jon turns the word over. Ned Stark raised him in this castle, gave him a room and a sword and a name. Rhaegar Targaryen gave him blood and bone and a birthright that would reshape everything if he said it aloud. He is standing in the courtyard of the only home he has known, having fought for it as a Stark, having won it as a Stark, and the name that is pressing against the inside of his chest belongs to a dynasty that died before he could speak. He does not say it. He goes inside. In the great hall, the northern lords are already arriving, filling the long tables, calling for Sansa and calling for Jon. And someone has found wine, and someone has found a fire, and there is the specific, exhausted joy of men who survived something they were not sure they would survive. Jon moves through it and accepts what is offered, and says what is expected, and carries the secret the way he has carried it since Castle Black, like a stone in a pocket, always there, always felt, never shown. He finds a quiet corridor and leans against the stone wall and is alone for the first time since the morning. Rickon is dead. He was 11 years old. He ran in the open field, and the arrow found him, and there was nothing Jon could have done. He knows this. Davos has already said it plainly, and Sansa has already agreed, and the logic is clean and correct. He knows it. He carries it anyway. This is Winterfell. It is his. He won it back. And the Northern Lords will call him their king if he lets them. And somewhere in Essos, a woman with dragons is sailing toward Westeros, with his name in her bloodline, and no idea what she is sailing toward. Tomorrow, there will be decisions to make. Tonight he presses his back against the cold stone of Winterfell's walls and breathes. The dead are burned on the third day. Winterfell's yard fills with smoke in the morning, and the Northern Lords stand in it, with their heads bowed and their faces doing the thing faces do when a battle is over, and the counting begins. Rickon Stark is burned with the rest of them, a boy of 11, last of the true-born Stark sons, killed in the field because Ramsay Bolton found a use for him. Jon stands at the pyre and does not look away. He owes the boy that much. The feasting that follows is the fragile, exhausted kind that comes after survival, rather than true victory. Men drink because they need to stop thinking. The hall is loud and warm, and full of the specific noise of people who have decided, collectively, to be alive. Sansa moves through it with a grace Jon recognizes from a long time ago. The Winterfell grace their mother taught them both. The way a lady moves through a hall full of men without letting any of them see what she is thinking. She is good at it. She has gotten better. Jon watches her from across the hall and thinks, tomorrow he takes her to the Godswood on the 4th morning, before the lords are awake and before the ravens need answering and before the day can make demands. The path to the heart tree is the same path it has always been, flagstone through old growth, the trees pressing in, the light going green and then grey and then vanishing altogether until the heart tree opens up ahead and fills the clearing with red. The weirwood is ancient. It stands at the center of the Godswood the way a bone stands at the center of a hand, everything else arranged around it, held in place by it. The bark is white, the leaves are red and still in the cold air. The carved face in the trunk weeps red sap that has been weeping since before any Lord of Winterfell was born. And Jon looks at it and thinks of Bran, somewhere far north, learning to see through these trees, and thinks of what Bran must know by now. He has thought about how to say it. There is no good way. I need to tell you something, he says. I should have told you before the battle. I kept it because I needed to be sure first, and now I am sure, and it cannot wait any longer. Sansa turns from the heart tree and looks at him. She is patient in a way she was not as a girl. She waits. Jon tells her everything. He tells it the way Benjen told it, and the way Howland Reed confirmed it, plainly, in order, without softening it. Benjen at the wall in his cold-hand state, riding out of the haunted forest, the children of the forest, and the weirwood network, the mechanism by which a half-dead man came to know what happened at a tower in Dawn 20 years ago. The Tower of Joy itself. 3 Kingsguard holding it, Ned and 6 companions fighting through them, only Ned and Howland Reed walking out. Lyanna in the room above, the promise. He tells her about Howland Reed at Greywater Watch, the 3 questions, the 3 answers. He tells her the name. The Godswood is quiet after that. The red leaves of the heart tree drift down one at a time in the still air. Somewhere in the walls of Winterfell, a door opens and closes. Sansa does not speak. Jon waits. He has waited longer for harder things. Ned wasn't your father, she says at last. It is not a question. Ned was my father in every way that mattered. He kept the promise. He raised me. He died without saying my name when saying it might have saved him. Jon looks at the weirwood face. But my name is not Jon Snow. Another silence. Sansa's hands are folded in front of her. Still, the way her hands go still when she is working. Jon has learned to read that stillness in the last few weeks. It means she is computing, not grieving. It means the part of her that survived Joffrey, and Cersei and Ramsay has taken over from the part that is his sister. Who else knows, she says. Davos, Melisandre, Howland Reed, Benjen, who is dying beyond the wall and cannot come south. He pauses. No one else. She nods once. Slow. Melisandre, Sansa says. That is the weak point. She believes in you, the way true believers believe. Loudly, and without being asked. She has already told anyone who would listen that you are some promised prince. She will put the pieces together if she hasn't already. She already has, Jon says. She agreed to keep it quiet. I don't trust that agreement more than a week. Sansa looks at him for a moment, with an expression he cannot fully read. Something between calculation and a thing older and more personal than calculation. Then she says, "Do you understand what this is?" "A problem," Jon says. "It is a weapon," she says, "or a disaster. I cannot tell which yet." She looks away at the heart tree. A stark-raised Targaryen who fought for the North, who died and came back, Who won Winterfell back from the men who took it? There is not a lord in this hall who would not follow that story if it were told correctly. But there is also not a queen in Essos who would not see it as a threat to everything she has built her claim upon. She pauses. Daenerys Targaryen is sailing west. She has 3 dragons and an army. If she hears that a legitimate male Targaryen heir is sitting in Winterfell, she has to choose between making an alliance and making a war. We do not know which she will choose. I know, Jon says. That is why we say nothing yet. We say nothing, Sansa agrees. Within this circle. We hold it until we understand the full shape of what it means, and until we have someone in place to manage how it is disclosed. She looks at him directly. Promise me. I promise. He means it. He also means the next question which he has been holding since the war. Does it change things? He holds her gaze. You were my sister. Now you are my cousin. That is not nothing. Sansa is quiet for a long moment. The red leaves drift. The weirwood face weeps its slow red tears. You are the only Stark I have left who fights, she says. Arya is somewhere in the world, and I do not know if she is alive. Bran is beyond the wall, with something that used to be Bran. The lords in that hall will follow you, because of your name and your sword, and what you did on that field. She pauses. I am asking you not to let any of this change that. Whatever your name is, whatever your blood is, stay the thing you already are. Jon nods. He does not speak, because he does not have words that are the right size for it. They stand for a while longer in the godswood, with the heart tree weeping between them, and the red leaves fall, and the castle comes awake around them slowly. And somewhere in Winterfell's halls, the ravens are already waiting with the day's demands. The inner circle is small. For now, it holds. But Melisandre is in the castle, and secrets told to more than one person are already in motion. And Jon knows from everything Benjen told him, and everything Howland confirmed, and everything he has carried in the locked room of himself for weeks, that the truth has a weight of its own, and weight finds its own level, and the only question is whether Jon can shape how it lands before the world does it for him. He walks back through the godswood, toward Winterfell with Sansa at his side, and he does not have an answer to that question yet. He has a battle won, a castle taken, a secret held between 4 people and a dying man beyond the wall. He will need more than that. He knows it. He goes inside. Lyanna Mormont is 11 years old, and she is the first one to stand. The great hall of Winterfell is full. Lords and their heirs packed in along the tables, men still bearing the marks of the battle. Faces that have spent the last week learning how to look like victory feels. Jon sits at the high table, and Sansa sits beside him, and Davos stands at the back of the room, and no one is moving. Exactly. But the room has the quality of something that is about to move. Lyanna Mormont gets to her feet. She is small, Lady of Bear Island, barely reaching the shoulder of the men around her, and she has the kind of face that was set early and will not change. She looks at Jon the way a hammer looks at a nail. She does not ask permission to speak. I don't care if he's a bastard, she says. Ned Stark's blood runs through his veins. He is king in the north. The silence that follows is the kind that means something is about to break open. Then Lord Manderley rises. Then Lord Glover. Then the smaller lords, house by house, getting to their feet along the benches, and the swords come up. 1, then 5, then the whole hall ringing with steel, lifted in salute, and the words rolling like thunder off the stone walls. The king in the north. The king in the north. The king in the north. Jon stands. He does not plan what to do with his face. He lets it do what it does, which is receive this, the weight of it, the sound of it, the thing these people are placing in his hands and trusting him not to drop. He looks at them. These are northern lords, thinned by the Red Wedding and the Bolton years, men and women who chose to bleed for a castle and a name. They are placing the North in his hands. Inside, he is thinking, they are crowning the wrong name. They do not know it yet. He has made this promise, and he will not dishonor their choice by running from it. He lifts his hand, and the hall quiets. The North is my home, he says. I will defend it with everything I have. The hall goes back to thunder. He finds the private council after the feast, when the lords have gone to their beds and the fires have burned low. His solar in Winterfell's tower, a table, 6 chairs, 1 window looking onto the dark yard below. Sansa takes the chair to his left, Davos across from her, Melisandre in the corner, as she always positions herself, where she can see everyone. Tormund Giantsbane, who does not use chairs the way chairs are intended, perches on the edge of his, with his elbows on his knees and his red beard catching the firelight. Jon closes the door and stands at the head of the table and tells them. He tells it the way he has told it twice before, plainly, without softening the edges. Benjen at the wall, the children of the forest, and what they showed a half-dead man through the weirwood network. The Tower of Joy and the 3 Kings Guard, and the 8 men who fought them, and the 2 who walked away. Lyanna dying in a bed of blood, and a promise made above her. Howland Reed at Greywater Watch, confirming it word for word. The name at the end. Tormund is the first to react. He laughs once, the short, sharp sound of unexpected news landing wrong, then falls quiet and looks at Jon across the table. The wildlings always knew you were more than a crow, he says. It is meant as a compliment. Jon does not know what to do with it. Davos does not laugh. He sits very still, with his hands flat on the table, doing the arithmetic he always does, counting costs and distances. He is silent for a long time. The realm doesn't need another war, he says. It needs to survive the Night King first. He looks at Jon. I have served rulers my whole life, and I know what a claim to the Iron Throne costs. Not just the man making it, but everyone who fights for him, and everyone who buries his dead. He pauses. Promise me you won't let this become a war before we've won the first one. I promise, Jon says. Say it like you mean it. I mean it, Jon says. The dead are marching. Everything else can wait until we've stopped them. Davos nods. He does not look fully reassured. He looks like a man who has heard promises before. Melisandre straightens in her corner when the room turns to her. Azor Ahai, she says, reborn amidst salt and smoke to carry the light against the great other. I prayed for years to understand the signs. She looks at Jon with the certainty of a woman who has finally assembled the answer she has been carrying for most of her life. Targaryen raised as a Stark, resurrected by fire. The prophecy required both. No, Jon says. She blinks. I am not your prophecy. I am a man, not a symbol. I am going to stop the dead from coming through the wall. That is the whole of my purpose. He holds her gaze. You will not speak of Azor Ahai. You will not speak of the prince that was promised. Not to the lords. Not to anyone. Do you understand me? I understand you, she says. Do you agree? A pause. For now. Sansa speaks before Jon can respond to that. She moves forward in her chair, and the room's attention comes to her in the way it has started to come to her, with a certain expectancy, because she is usually right. Jon rules the North as king in the North, she says. His Stark identity, his northern legitimacy, what he earned on the battlefield, those are the foundation. We do not touch them. The question of his Targaryen claim is a different question, and it belongs in a different room. She looks around the table. Daenerys Targaryen is sailing for Westeros. She has 3 dragons and an army of Unsullied and Dothraki. We are going to need those dragons for the Night King, which means we need an alliance with her before the dead reach the wall. The Targaryen question gets resolved between Jon and Daenerys. Not in this hall, not in front of the Northern Lords. She won't like it, Davos says. No, Sansa agrees. But if she is what she says she is, a ruler who puts the realm ahead of herself, she will listen. Then he asks the question the table has been avoiding since he started speaking. Daenerys Targaryen outranks every lord in Westeros by her own accounting, he says. She has Targaryen blood and dragons and an army and a throne she intends to take. If I tell her who I am, I outrank her. A legitimate male heir to the Iron Throne outranks a female heir in Westerosi succession law. That is not a conversation she will have easily. If I don't tell her, I am just a northern king with a wildling army and no dragons. Go into her on terms, she says. He looks at them. There is no simple path. The council does not have a clean answer. Sansa presses for timing and patience. Davos argues the Night King makes succession irrelevant for now. Tormund says, wildlings do not care who sits on what throne. Melisandre watches Jon and says nothing. No decision is reached. Then a steward enters with a raven's message. Black wax, a 3-headed dragon pressed into the seal. He sets it before Jon and withdraws. The message is short. Daenerys Targaryen, first of her name, is at Dragonstone. She invites the king in the north to bend the knee and discuss the defense of the realm. The invitation is courteous. The expectation is not. Jon sets the letter on the table. He looks at the seal. 3-headed dragon, black on red. The sigil of his father's house. The sigil of the woman who does not yet know he exists. I'll go to her, he says. The room erupts. Davos objects. Sansa goes very still, in a way that means she has thoughts she is organizing before she speaks them. Tormund says something that is probably a wildling proverb. Melisandre says nothing and watches. Jon holds up his hand. I'll go, he says, not to bend the knee, to make an alliance. The Night King is real. She has dragons. We need each other. He looks at Sansa. And when I'm ready, when I have judged who she is and whether she can receive it, I will tell her who I am. Sansa holds his gaze for a long moment. Then she nods, once. Slow. The fire burns down. The council disperses. Jon sits alone with the raven's letter and the 3-headed dragon seal and thinks about Dragonstone. A home he was never told was his. Then he goes to find a map. The ship rounds the headland at dawn, and Dragonstone comes into view. Jon stands at the prow and says nothing. He has sailed past a dozen castles on this journey south, the coast of Westeros sliding past in the early grey light, and each one has been a castle. Dragonstone is something else. It rises from the volcanic rock of the island in towers that do not look built so much as grown. Black stone carved into the shapes of dragons at every turn. Every buttress and parapet transformed by hands that worked with a magic that has been dead for a century. The castle is a declaration. It says, we were here, and we were not like you, and we built this so you would never forget it. Jon was born inside that castle. He has never known it until now. Davos comes to stand beside him at the rail and watches his face with the careful attention of a man who knows something important is happening and is not sure whether to speak. He does not speak. Jon is grateful for it. The Unsullied are waiting on the steps when the boat comes in. Ranks of soldiers in grey armor, spears upright, faces expressionless. They are soldiers, the way the wall was a wall, without room for negotiation. Jon walks up the steps between them and thinks, these are Daenerys's men. They bled for her. They would die for her. That is a kind of loyalty he understands. Then the dragons come. They come out of the cloud from the south, 3 of them, wings spread wide enough to block the light. Drogon first, the largest, black as a burned scar, banking over the sea. Then the others behind him. Davos makes a sound and steps back. Jon does not step back. He stands on the steps of Dragonstone and watches the dragons come overhead and feels the wind from the nearest one's wings hit him like a wall of warm air. The nearest one is green and bronze. It is Rhaegal, named for a man who died at the Ruby Ford before Jon was old enough to walk. It passes directly over him in a wide bank, lower than the others, and for a moment its eye, gold-flecked, enormous, belonging to something older than any kingdom in Westeros, tracks down and finds him. It holds. The dragon holds its eye on Jon for a count of 3 heartbeats, suspended in that bank, before it wheels away and follows the others south. Davos says, very quietly, "Did that just—" "I don't know," Jon says. The throne room of Dragonstone is the room of a queen who has not yet made her capital anywhere permanent. The carved stone walls, the dragon motifs, the cold grandeur of a castle that has been empty for years and is now alive again. It is all of a piece with the dragons outside and the Unsullied on the steps. Jon sees it and thinks, she built this again from nothing. She crossed the sea with nothing, and she is here, in the seat of her ancestors, with 3 living dragons. He respects it. He does not underestimate it. Daenerys Targaryen is younger than he expected. She is 19, a year younger than him, with silver blonde hair that is unusual in Westeros and unusual in Essos, and is just itself, a marker of what she is. She has violet eyes, and the bearing of a woman who has been told she was born to rule for so long that the belief has become load-bearing. She is also, Jon observes, watching him with the particular attention of someone who just saw her dragon behave strangely toward a stranger, and has not yet decided what to do with that information. She lists her titles. There are many. Jon waits for them to finish. "You are the king in the north," she says at last. "I would ask you to bend the knee." "I haven't come to bend the knee," Jon says. The room goes very still. Tyrion Lannister, standing at Daenerys' right, looks at Jon with an expression that is somewhere between warning and reluctant respect. Missandei, to her left, maintains her composure without effort. "I've come to ask for your help," Jon says. "There is a threat north of the wall that is going to kill everyone in Westeros, regardless of who sits on what throne, if it is not stopped. The Night King, an army of the dead, whites, White Walkers, things that have been dead for thousands of years, and do not stay that way. They are real, they are marching, and the only things that kill them are fire and dragonglass." He waits. Daenerys studies him. She has the face of a woman who hears a great many claims from a great many petitioners, and has learned to sort them quickly. She is sorting him. "You want my dragons," she says. "I want your dragonglass. You have mines full of it beneath this castle. I want the alliance. If you come north and fight with me, I will fight for you in the south afterward." He holds her gaze. "But the dead come first. They have to. There is no Iron Throne to sit on if the Night King reaches Winterfell." The room is quiet for a long moment. Then Tyrion leans toward Daenerys and speaks quietly, too low for Jon to catch most of it. But Jon catches enough. "Costs nothing, my queen. And if he is wrong, the dragonglass stays in the ground. And if he is right," Daenerys lifts her hand, and Tyrion falls quiet. "I will think on it," she says. She is not dismissing him. She is not agreeing. She is a ruler making a ruler's calculation. Jon accepts it. He turns to leave, and her voice catches him before he reaches the door. "Why didn't the dragon harm you?" Jon turns. She is looking at him steadily, the question asked as though she has been holding it since the steps. "I don't know," he says, which is not entirely a lie. He knows what he suspects. He knows what Benjen told him, and what Howland Reed confirmed, and what the name written in Septon Maynard's journal says about the blood in his veins. He does not say any of it. He walks to the painted table instead. The massive carved map of Westeros that dominates the center of the room, every castle and river and forest rendered in stone. He has never seen it before. He has spent his life in the north, and he knows the north the way he knows his own hands. And he looks now at the painted table and traces the shape of the northern kingdoms with one finger. The Wall, Winterfell, Castle Black, every castle he has patrolled, every road he has ridden, every river he has crossed in the dark. All of it there, in stone. He knows every inch of it. He was born in the south of this map, in a tower that does not appear on it, to a woman who died there. He has never been back. The north, he says, to no one in particular. That is what I am fighting for. Daenerys watches him from her seat and says nothing. His chambers at Dragonstone are austere. Black stone walls, a narrow window looking out over the sea, a fire that does not quite drive out the damp. Jon sits on the edge of the bed, and Davos closes the door behind them. And the moment the latch catches, Davos turns to him. "You need to tell her," Davos says. "Not yet." "Jon, not yet," Jon says again. He is not angry. He is tired and certain, and he has thought about this longer than Davos has. She has an army and 3 dragons, and a claim she has built her entire life around. I walk in there on the first day and tell her that a legitimate male heir to the Iron Throne is sitting across from her. Before she knows me, before she trusts me, before she has any reason to believe I am not just another enemy in the queue. She will see a threat. She will make a decision about that threat before I can explain anything. "When?" he says finally. "When I'm sure she'll choose the living over her claim," Jon says. "When I've watched her long enough to know what she is. Not the titles, not the dragons, what she actually chooses when the choice is hard." He looks at the fire. "Benjen told me the truth before I marched to war because the war was coming anyway, and I needed to know who I was. The calculus with Daenerys is different. She has power I need. I am not going to waste it by frightening her before she has any reason to trust me." Davos sits down on the room's single chair and says nothing for a long while. Outside, somewhere over the water, one of the dragons calls, a sound that carries through the black stone walls like it belongs there, like the castle was built to hold it. Jon listens to it and does not say the thing he is thinking, which is that it sounds, in some way he cannot name, like home. The dragon glass mines run deep beneath Dragonstone. Jon descends into them on the second morning, carrying a torch down a passage cut by the volcanic heat of the island itself. And what he finds, at the bottom, is more than he expected. The deposits are vast, shelves and veins of black obsidian running through the rock in seams as wide as a man's torso, glittering in the torchlight. It is not a store of material. It is a mountain of it. The mine could outfit an army 10 times the size of the one Jon has. He works alongside the Unsullied through the morning. They are efficient, the Unsullied, trained for every useful purpose and none of the decorative ones. And they learn the work of mining and shaping dragon glass quickly. Jon shows them what the weapons need to do, not just slice, but penetrate, and penetrate with enough force behind a small enough point to reach the thing inside a white that keeps it moving. It is not delicate work. It is exacting. By midday, he has a crate of arrowheads and is starting on spear points when he hears footsteps on the passage stairs, and Daenerys enters the cave with 2 guards and no fanfare. She stops at the entrance to the main chamber and looks at the walls. The stone here is old enough to remember something older than Dragonstone's construction. The carvings are not Valyrian work. They predate Valyrian work by thousands of years, cut by hands that did not have iron tools, and they cover every reachable surface of the chamber, from floor to the height a standing person can reach. Jon has been looking at them all morning. He has had time to understand what they show. Children of the forest on one side, small, dark-eyed forest pale, and across from them, larger, rougher cut, the first men, and between them, towering figures in ice-pale stone, with weapons of cold and eyes that the carvings somehow make look alive. The White Walkers, the same enemy they are all marching toward. And in the center carving, in the widest panel, the children and the first men are standing together. Daenerys looks at it for a long time. Jon sets down his work and comes to stand beside her. They fought each other for generations, he says. The children and the first men, wars that lasted centuries. They could not agree on anything. He looks at the center carving, and then the White Walkers came from the north, and they stopped fighting each other and fought together instead. They didn't win because either side was the strongest. They won because they stopped standing apart. Daenerys studies the carvings. She is not a woman who needs a lesson explained twice. She looks at the panel, and she looks at him, and she understands exactly what he is saying and why he brought her here to say it. She does not agree yet, but she does not dismiss it. The dragon, she says. She has turned to look at him the way she looked at him yesterday when Rhaegal banked low, with the intent attention of a woman cataloguing something she cannot yet explain. Rhaegal behaved differently around you than around anyone else on that dock. I have seen him near strangers before. He does not usually hold his eye on them. I noticed, Jon says. Why? I don't know. She studies his face with the focus of a woman who has learned to read men in courts and on battlefields across 2 continents. She is looking for the lie. He is not lying. He does not know, he suspects, and there is a difference between those 2 things. But he is aware of the pause between his words and the next thought in the room. And she is aware of it too. She files it away. She does not push further. She turns back to the carvings, and they stand in the torchlit cave for another minute in silence, before she goes back up the stairs with her guards. And Jon goes back to the spear points, and the mine is very quiet. The news about Cersei arrives at evening, a raven from King's Landing, relayed north and then south again through a chain of maesters, carrying the bare facts of it. Cersei Lannister sits the Iron Throne. The great sept of Baelor is ash. The Tyrells are gone. Cersei rules alone, with the Lannister name and the remains of the Lannister army, and nothing else. Daenerys receives this in the war room, and her face goes very still in the way Jon has started to recognize as her calculating face, in the expression that means she is running a campaign in her head, testing strategies and discarding them. I could end it in a day, she says. Not to Jon specifically. Tow the room. Drogon alone above the Red Keep, and Cersei's war is over before it begins. Yes, Jon says. And what does the realm call you after? The Targaryens who burned men from Dragonback are remembered in the north as something specific, Jon says. They are not remembered as liberators. They are remembered as the kind of power that makes men afraid of what comes next, because what comes next might also burn from above, and there is nothing to be done about it. He holds her gaze. Your father burned men alive. He burned them in their armor. in front of the throne, for the pleasure of watching what fire does. The realm did not forget it. The realm paid in blood for 20 years after. He pauses. If you fly to King's Landing and burn it, you will never be loved. You will only be feared. And fear is not enough to hold 7 kingdoms. The room is very quiet. How do you know so much about my father? Daenerys says. Jon pauses. It is a beat too long. He feels it happen and cannot stop it. And in that beat, the room shifts slightly, a degree colder. I know what it cost the realm when a Targaryen burned men alive, he says. She looks at him. The pause is already logged. He can see it in her eyes, the second entry in the catalogue she is keeping, right next to Rhaegar's behavior on the dock. She does not press it. She turns back to the war maps and says, "We will discuss strategy in the morning." And the audience is over. Davos is waiting in Jon's chambers, with a look that says he has been waiting for long enough to have formed opinions about it. She is watching you, Davos says. She is watching the way a person watches something that is almost familiar but not quite, the way you look at a word you can almost read. I know, Jon says. She will figure it out before you tell her if you wait much longer. I know that too. Jon sits on the edge of the bed. The fire is going outside. The sea moves against the island's black rock in the slow rhythm it keeps at night when the wind is low. The raven from Eastwatch comes an hour later. It is carried up from the maester's rooms by a steward who does not understand what he is delivering. And it lands on Jon's table, and Jon reads it twice, and then reads it a third time. The Night King's army has been sighted moving south. The Rangers put the front of it within 3 weeks of the wall. The column behind the front stretches. The message says, as far as north as a man on horseback could ride in a day, and still not see the end of it. Jon sets the message on the table. 3 weeks. He looks at the fire. He thinks about the timing he has been constructing in his head since Dragonstone came into view. Wait until she trusts me. Wait until I know what she chooses when the choice is hard. Wait until the right moment. And he looks at the message from Eastwatch, and he does the arithmetic. 3 weeks. Tomorrow, he says. Davos looks up from the corner where he has been pretending to read a document. You've been saying tomorrow for a week, Davos says. Jon looks at the Raven's message. 3 weeks. An army that stretches a day's ride in every direction. Tomorrow, he says again. This time he means it. Daenerys has dismissed Tyrion by the time Jon reaches the War Council chamber. She stands before the painted table alone, studying the carved stone map with the particular focus she brings to strategy. The small adjustments of position, the way her eyes move from castle to castle tracing supply lines and troop movements that exist only in her head. She does not look up when Jon enters. She already knows something is coming. She has known since the pause in the throne room yesterday, and she has been waiting for it with the patience of a woman who has learned that waiting is sometimes the most powerful move available. Jon closes the door behind him. There is something I should have told you on the first day, he says. I didn't, because I needed to understand who you were before I put this in your hands. I need you to hear all of it before you respond to any part of it. She turns from the painted table. She folds her hands in front of her and waits. Jon tells her. He tells it in order, the way he has told it to everyone who needed to hear it. Benjen Stark appearing at the wall in his cold-hand state, the children of the forest, and the Weirwood network, the memories they showed a half-dead man of a tower in Dawn 20 years ago. He tells her about riding south to Greywater Watch, about Howland Reed waiting at the dock and saying yes to 3 questions in a quiet room over a fire that did not warm anyone. He tells her about Septon Maynard's journal, the annulment of Rhaegar's first marriage, the ceremony before the heart tree, the names written in the record. He tells her about Lyanna Stark, who was not taken, who chose, who died giving birth in a bed of blood, and made a man swear to protect what she was leaving behind. Then he says the name. Rhaegar Targaryen was my father. Lyanna Stark was my mother. They were married, secretly, legally, before a heart tree with a septon as witness. I am Aegon Targaryen, 6th of his name. The room is quiet. Daenerys walks to the window. Outside, over the sea, Rhaegal and Drogon are riding the thermals. Two shapes that are not quite birds and not quite anything else, banking in the clean air above the volcanic island. They were named for her brothers, Viserys, who died in the heat of his own greed, Rhaegar, who died at the Ruby Ford when Jon was not yet born. She has carried those names her whole life. A brother she never knew, except through the grief of the people who mourned him. And a brother who taught her what cruelty looked like from the inside. She has dreamed of her family since before she can remember. She has built the idea of her family from stories and ashes, and now Rhaegar's son is standing in her throne room. She does not speak for a long time. My brother Rhaegar is dead, she says at last. Her voice is level. He has been dead for 20 years. You are asking me to accept, on the word of a half-dead man and an old Cranogman, and a journal I have never seen. That everything I have spent my life fighting toward, the throne, the name, the right, belongs to you instead. I am not asking you to give me anything, Jon says. I am asking you to fight beside me. She turns from the window. Why didn't you tell me when you arrived? Because I did not know how you would react, he says. Because you have an army and 3 dragons, and a claim you have built your entire life around. And I walked onto your island as a northern king, with a wildling army and no proof you could see or touch. If I had told you on the first day, before you knew me, before we had stood in that cave together, and before you understood that I am not here for your throne, you would have seen a rival. You might have closed the door on everything. He looks at her steadily. I needed to know you were a person who could receive this. I believe now that you are. She studies him. He holds her gaze. And the succession, she says. They both already know the answer. Jon says it anyway, because leaving it unsaid would be worse. By the rules of succession, a legitimate son of the Crown Prince outranks the Crown Prince's younger sister in the line of inheritance. That is the law as it stands in Westeros. He pauses. I know that. I am not here to take the throne. I am here because the Night King is coming and we need each other. Those are the only facts that matter right now. Daenerys turns back to the window. Rhaegal turns in the sky above, and the green of his scales catches the light. You say you don't want the throne, she says, but you are Rhaegar's son, my brother's son standing here. The lords of Westeros are not going to look at that and accept a settled arrangement. They will make a war out of it whether we want them to or not. She faces him. If you are who you say you are, and I'm not saying yet that I believe you, what happens after the Night King is dead? You bend the knee to me. The legitimate heir sets aside his claim for the sake of a woman whose claim is weaker. No lord in the 7 kingdoms will honor that. They will use it to fracture everything I have built. Then we will deal with the lords of Westeros after the dead stop marching, Jon says. One war at a time. Silence. She looks at him for a long time, and something shifts in how she looks. It is subtle, the change that happens when a decision that has been forming for a long time finally settles. She has been examining him since the dock, cataloguing the pauses and the dragon's behavior and the knowledge he carries about her father. And now the last piece has arrived, and she is arranging them. He is Rhaegar's son. She does not know, looking at him, the dark hair, the grey eyes, the stark face, whether she believes it yet in her bones. But She is starting to feel the shape of it. She has been alone in her family her entire life, and here is a person who carries the same blood she carries, and she is not sure what to do with that. "You look like a Stark," she says. Not unkindly. "I was raised as one," Jon says. "Rhaegar loved a Stark enough to start a war," she says. "Or whatever the truth was, whatever she chose." She pauses. "My whole life I was told he abducted her, that he was capable of that." She looks at Jon. "If she chose, if they married, then he was not what I was told he was either." "I don't know who he was," Jon says. "I never got the chance to." She nods. It is a small nod, private, more for herself than for him. "We fight the Night King together," she says. "Her dragons, your knowledge of the North, our armies together. What comes after the long night? The throne, the succession, what the lords will make of it. We face that together, as family." She pauses on the word as though testing its weight. "As whatever we are." "Yes," Jon says. He turns to leave. Her voice catches him at the door. Quieter now, the formal authority drained out of it. Something more careful in its place. "Does the dragon know?" she says. Jon stops. He turns. "I think so," he says. She looks out the window at Rhaegal turning in the sky. The green and bronze dragon that carries her brother's name. That has carried it since before she crossed the narrow sea. Since before Dragonstone. Since before any of this. Maimed for a man who, it now appears, left something behind. "Then it's already decided," she says. Jon leaves her at the window. In the corridor outside, Davos is waiting with the controlled expression of a man who has been managing his face for several hours. Jon looks at him, and Davos reads the outcome from whatever Jon's face is doing. "Well," Davos says. "The alliance holds," Jon says. Davos absorbs this. He nods once. Slow, the nod of a man revising a set of calculations. "And the rest of it?" Jon walks. Davos falls in beside him. "The rest of it waits," Jon says, "until the dead are dealt with." Outside, Rhaegal calls once across the water. The deep, resonant sound that carries through Dragonstone's black walls, the way sound carries through stone that was built to hold it. And Jon does not stop walking, but he listens to it the whole length of the corridor, all the way to the stairs that lead back down to the mines and the work that still needs doing before they march north. Daenerys does not want him to go. She says it plainly, in the war room at Dragonstone, with the map of the North spread on the table between them and the logic of the plan laid out in Jon's words still hanging in the air. She is not a woman who disguises her arguments. She states them and drives through them and expects to be met with equal directness. "You are asking me to let you walk into the territory of the Night King with a handful of men to capture something that is already dead," she says. "The risk is not proportional to the reward." "The reward is Cersei," Jon says. If Cersei sees a white, holds the proof in front of her face, cannot argue with it. She calls a ceasefire. The Lannister armies stand down while we fight the real war. We get to march north without a second front in the south eating at our supply lines. He looks at the map. "We need all of Westeros for this. We cannot fight the Night King with half of it stabbing at our backs." Daenerys is quiet for a long moment. She knows he is right. She does not have to like it. "I'll come if you send a raven," she says. "I know," Jon says. The gate at Eastwatch by the Sea opens before dawn, and the ranging party moves north. Jon leads, Longclaw at his hip, a dragonglass dagger at his belt. Jorah Mormont rides at his left. Older than Jon by 25 years, broad and grey-stubbled, carrying himself with the careful discipline of a man who has survived everything he should not have survived and learned not to waste it. He is Daenerys's man. He is also, John has come to understand in the weeks since Dragonstone, a man who will stand in front of a threat rather than behind it, which is the only quality that matters beyond the wall. The cold north of the wall is a different thing from the cold south of it. It is not colder in degree, it is colder in kind. It does not feel like weather. It feels like the land itself opposing the presence of the living, pressing on the lungs and the bones and the back of the mind with the specific malice of something that knows you are there and wants you not to be. They find the white by the third day. It is a scout, or was, once. It moves through the trees with the wrong gait of the dead, the specific wrongness that is not injury or age, but the absence of the thing that makes a body move with purpose. They take it. The capture is fast and brutal, and the dragonglass holds. What follows is not fast. The army of the dead responds the way a body responds to a splinter. Everything comes for the point of the intrusion. The party runs for the lake. John has mapped this in his head since they left Eastwatch. The frozen water, the island of rock at its center, the narrow ice that can bear the weight of one man but not 20 whites. Pressing forward at once, they reach the island, and they hold. The cold is a weapon. The whites are a weapon. The distance to the wall is a weapon. John sends the ravens south, and they fight. Valyrian steel, and dragonglass in a ring on a rock in the middle of a frozen lake, and the dead pressing in from every direction, and time doing the thing it always does in a siege, which is expand. An hour becomes 3 hours. 3 hours becomes a count of attacks repelled, and men who are still standing, and the night presses down, and the whites do not tire, because they are not alive enough to tire. John is bleeding from his left arm. When he hears them, the sound comes before the sight. The wind thunder of 3 dragons from the south, and then the light, Daenerys descending on Drogon, with Rhaegal and Viserion flanking. They come in fast and low, and the dragon fire hits the white lines like a wall of heat, and the dead burn beautifully, the way things burn that have no moisture left in them. The lake ice heaves with the heat, the whites scatter and burn, and the ranging party gets onto Drogon's back, and Jon is the last one up. Ben the Night King moves. He is tall, still, ancient, in a way that older men are not ancient, standing at the edge of the frozen shore with his ice spear already raised. Jon sees him and knows what is about to happen and cannot stop it. The spear crosses the distance in a line that is too straight for something thrown by any living man, and it finds Viserion. The dragon screams once, a sound that has no human word for it, the sound of something enormous that has never known pain encountering pain for the first and last time, and falls. The water takes him. Daenerys' scream carries over the ice. Rhaegal banks away, and Drogon lifts with the survivors, and they are in the air, and moving south, and Jon, at the back of the group, turns to look at the lake. Viserion is gone under the black water. Daenerys is shaking, rigid, hands gripping Drogon's neck, not making a sound anymore. Jon does not touch her. He watches the lake get smaller beneath them as Drogon climbs south, and he thinks, the Night King planned this. He was waiting for the dragons to come. He wanted to trade. Jon does not finish the thought. Drogon pitches, and Jon's grip slips and the world turns sideways. He falls. The lake comes up fast, and the ice hits him like stone. He goes through. The cold under the ice is the total cold, the kind that reaches inside the body and takes hold of the processes that keep it moving. And Jon pulls himself toward the light above the surface and gets his arms over the edge of the ice and drags himself out on muscle memory alone. The wall crawl, the climb, the last man standing instinct that has kept him alive through things that should have killed him twice over. He is on the ice. His sword is still in his hand. He does not know how. The whites converge from the shore. Then, torchlight from the north. Hoofbeats on the ice, too fast for any living horse in this cold. Coming out of the dark, at a pace that means the rider is not conserving the animal, because the animal does not need conserving. The flaming flail catches the nearest white before John sees the face clearly. But he knows the posture before he sees the face. He has known it since the night at the wall, when the horn blew and something came out of the haunted forest alone. Benjen Stark rides through the white line and scatters it. He reaches John in the space between one attack and the next, and he has seconds. He knows it. John knows it. The dead are already regrouping behind him. Benjen looks down at John from the horse. The torch in his hand burns without regard for the cold. His face is the same pale stillness it was at the wall gate, the face of a man who has spent the time between his first death and his second one in some state of being that is not either thing fully. "You know," Benjen says. "Not a question." "I know," John says. Howland confirmed it. Something moves in Benjen's face. A breath, or what passes for one. Good. He pulls John up onto the horse and points it south. The horse runs. John holds on. The ice passes beneath. Behind him, the whites close over the place where Benjen was standing, and John does not turn around. He does not need to. He knows what is happening behind him. He has known since the war that this was the shape of it, that Benjen came back not to live, but to deliver a truth, and then spend what remained of whatever he had in exchange for one more useful thing. "Your mother wanted you to live." The shout carries through the wind, barely audible over the hoofbeats, and the ice and the distance growing between them. Benjen's voice, behind him, getting smaller. "Don't make her wrong." He does not look back. The wall comes into view grey and massive at the end of the ice plain, and the gate at Eastwatch is open. A thin line of yellow light in the black stone. John rides through it, and the warmth of the gatehouse hits him like a wall, and he stops the horse and slides off and lands against the tunnel wall and stays there. Ghost is waiting in the gatehouse. The direwolf comes to him out of the dark, white and silent, and presses against John's side with the specific weight of an animal that has been waiting for a long time and is choosing not to make anything of it. John sets his hand on Ghost's head. Behind him, somewhere north of the wall, a light goes dark. John stands in the gatehouse with his hand on his wolf and does not speak, and the cold presses through the stone, and the night continues. And, somewhere far behind him, the army of the dead is still marching south toward a wall that is no longer the obstacle it was an hour ago. Tomorrow, Daenerys will land at Eastwatch to mourn. Tonight, John breathes. Daenerys is still on the shore when John comes through the Eastwatch gate. She has not gone inside. She is standing in the wind off the sea, with her silver-blonde hair pulled flat against her face, and her eyes red from the cold or from what happened over the lake. John cannot tell which. She looks at him, and he looks at her, and neither of them speaks. She comes forward and puts a hand on his arm and steers him inside, and the warmth of the gatehouse is the first warmth John has felt since before the lake, and it hits him like a blow. They sit by a fire. There is nothing to say yet. John has lost Benjen. The last living connection to the family he was told was his, and also the man who found him in the dark at the wall and gave him a truth that changed the shape of everything. Daenerys has lost Viserion, a dragon which is also a child, which is something that has no clean translation into the language of loss that men and women use. But she is using it anyway, sitting on her side of the fire, with her hands folded and her face doing what a face does when something has been removed from the world that cannot be put back. The grief is the same shape. They both know it. Jon reaches across and takes her hand. "I pledge my sword to you," he says. Not as a subject, as family. He has chosen the word carefully. It is the first time either of them has said it out loud, the word that covers what they are, which is not alliance partners or political allies, or a northern king and a southern queen reaching a transaction. Rhaegar's son and Rhaegar's sister, sitting on opposite sides of a fire at the edge of the world, with the dead marching south behind them. She looks at him. She nods once. She does not let go of his hand. They are still sitting there when the sound comes. It begins as a low vibration in a stone floor, a frequency too deep for human hearing that resolves into something else as it grows. Jon has heard ice creak before, the specific articulation of cold matter under stress, and this is that sound enlarged to a scale that has no equivalent in the experience of any living person. He gets to his feet. Outside, to the north across the water, the wall is burning blue, not fire, not the orange and red of wood and oil. Blue, cold and absolute, the color of the Night King's eyes and the eyes of his dead. And it moves along the wall's face at Eastwatch in a horizontal line that is not burning through, but melting through. The ancient ice running in streams as the heat of something wrong dissolves 8,000 years of construction in minutes. Daenerys is beside Jon at the gatehouse window. She does not speak. The section of wall at Eastwatch comes apart. Not dramatically, not a collapse or an explosion, but a slow, terrible opening. A gap in the structure that has held the North back since before Westeros had kings. And through it, the army of the dead begins to march. A column that stretches back until the dark swallows it. Whites and White Walkers moving south in the silence of things that have no reason to hurry because nothing south of them has stopped them yet. The wall is breached. The ravens go out within the hour. Every maester's rookery sends the message on every route available. South to King's Landing, east to the Vale, west to the Iron Islands, and, most urgently, to Winterfell, where Sansa Stark is managing the defense and the supply lines and everything that needs managing when a war is 3 days away. The message arrives at Winterfell before dawn. It arrives at approximately the same time as Samwell Tarly. Sam comes in through the south gate, with Gilly and the look of a man who has been riding hard for longer than is comfortable, carrying a satchel that he will not put down. He goes directly to Bran, not to Sansa, not to the maester, to Bran, who is in the Godswood in his chair before the heart tree, where he often is. The white bark gleams in the torch that Mira has left burning. The carved face weeps its red sap. Sam opens the satchel and places Septon Maynard's journal on the arm of Bran's chair. It was at the Citadel, Sam says. In the archive, Maynard kept everything. He wrote down the annulment of Rhaegar's marriage to Elia Martell. He wrote down the ceremony in Dawn, the heart tree, Lyanna's name, the date. It is all there, in his hand, in ink that is 37 years old. He pauses. Jon is legitimate. Bran has been looking at the journal since Sam set it down. His eyes have the quality they get when he is not entirely present in the Godswood, when part of him is in the Weirwood network, standing in other times and other places the way the three-eyed raven taught him to stand. He has already seen the Tower of Joy. He has watched it through the tree eyes more than once, the fight on the steps, the 3 Kings Guard, Ned and Howland walking through the door. He has seen Lyanna's face. He has heard the promise. I know, Bran says. He looks at the journal. But now we have proof. He tells Mira to find Sansa. Sansa comes to the Godswood with her cloak pulled close and her face already arranged for news she expects to be bad. She looks at Bran, and at Sam, and at the journal on the chair arm. "The wall is breached," she says. "I received the Raven 20 minutes ago." "I know," Bran says again. "There is something else." Sansa looks at Sam. Sam opens the journal to the relevant pages and holds it out. She reads it standing in the torchlight, quickly. The trained efficiency of a woman who has learned to process information fast, because slow processing gets people killed. She reads it twice. Then she closes the journal and hands it back to Sam and looks at Bran. "Septon Maynard's journal," she says. "At the Citadel. The annulment is there. The marriage is there. Jon's name is there." Sansa is quiet for a moment. "I know," she says. "Jon told me. Months ago." A pause. "Does Daenerys know?" "Yes," Bran says. She looks at the heart tree, the old white face weeping red in the torchlight. And she does the arithmetic she always does when new information arrives, running the political calculation in the same motion as the personal one. The wall is breached. The Night King is marching south. The armies are 3 days from Winterfell at most. "The timing is what it is," she says finally. She is not asking a question. She is naming the situation. "Yes," Bran says. She takes the journal from Sam and goes back inside. Daenerys lands Drogon in Winterfell's courtyard 2 days later. And the Northern Lords look up at the dragon on the stones with an expression that Jon has seen on soldiers' faces before. The expression that means, "This is real. I knew it was real, and it is still more real than I was ready for." Drogon is large. He is very large. He folds his wings with the unhurried authority of something that has never had to be hurried. And Daenerys descends and stands in the courtyard and looks at Winterfell. Jon stands beside her. The Northern Lords look at them both. That evening, in the great hall, Jon and Daenerys stand at the high table together, and Jon tells the assembled lords the truth. He tells it plainly, without softening it. Benjen, Howland, the journal that Sam found, the name. He watches the room absorb it. Some faces go hard. Lord Royce of the Vale, a Glover cousin. 2 lords who have spent their whole lives in the north and do not like the word Targaryen in their ears. Some faces go unreadable. The trained political blank of men computing the implications before they respond. Lyanna Mormont, 11 years old and Lady of Bear Island, stands up before anyone else can speak. She looks at Jon across the table. "You fought for us," she says. "You took back Winterfell. You led men beyond the wall to prove the dead were real." She pauses. "What you're called doesn't change what you did." No one argues with Lyanna Mormont tonight. Outside, somewhere in the darkness beyond Winterfell's walls, the army of the dead is marching. The Night King has been past the wall for 2 days. The long night is here. The argument in the great hall does not go on long. The darkness before the battle is the most complete darkness Jon has ever stood in. Winterfell's walls are a ring of torchlight above the frozen ground, and the army of the dead is everywhere beyond it. Not visible so much as present, a weight in the dark, the specific pressure of 100,000 things that used to be people pressing in from every direction. The Night King is out there. His army is the darkness itself. Then Melisandre arrives. She comes from the south, on a horse, red robes in the torchlight, the ruby at her throat, catching whatever light there is. She rides to the trench that the defenders have dug around Winterfell's walls, a wide channel of kindling and oil that has been soaked and prepared and waiting. She looks at it for a moment. She says words that are not any language Jon has learned. She lifts her hands. The trench ignites in a single line all the way around the castle. Fire from one end to the other. orange and alive, 20 feet high. The dead press back from it. For a moment, there is a wall of fire between the living and the dead. And for a moment, the moment holds. Then the Dothraki go out. The Dothraki charge in the dark, because it is what they do, into the teeth of things that should not be charged, on horseback, with araks burning in the night. The fire of the araks fades. The screaming fades. The sound of 10,000 horses charging fades. The darkness where the charge went consumes itself in silence. There are no survivors. There is only the silence where there were living people, and the darkness that ate them. Jon is on Rhaegar before the silence finishes settling. The dragon knows him, has known him since the dock at Dragonstone, when that gold-flecked eye held on him for 3 heartbeats. Jon climbs, and Rhaegar rises and the ground drops away below. Daenerys is already on Drogon to his left, and they go to work. The dragon fire cuts paths through the dead, burning swaths where the whites ignite and do not get up. Below on the walls, the living hold every inch they can, and the dead come on. The Night King is somewhere in the dark, and neither of them can find him. What they do not see, the Night King walking through the gate into Winterfell. He moves without urgency through the yard and the great hall, toward the Godswood. The whites part for him. He walks the path through the old trees to the heart tree at the center, where the white bark and the red leaves and the carved weeping face have stood since before the Night King himself walked the earth as a man. Bran is there, sitting in his chair, hands in his lap, not entirely present in his body. Around him, what is left of his guard. Theon Greyjoy is the last one standing. He took Winterfell once, from the family that raised him, and the taking destroyed him before Ramsay Bolton finished the work. He has spent years becoming something other than what he was. He is that other thing now, standing in the Godswood with a spear. He looks at the Night King and charges. It does not work. He dies on his feet, which is the only way left that means anything. The Night King stands over Bran. The red leaves fall in the torchlight. The carved face weeps. Then Arya comes out of the dark. She has been moving through the castle since the battle began, through corridors and yards that no one else navigates the way she navigates them, through the specific dark of a place she grew up in, that she knows with her body, the same way Jon knows it with his. She comes through the Godswood trees without a sound. The Night King starts to turn. She is already past him. The blade changes hands. The Valyrian steel dagger, the one that started a war when it was sent to murder Bran in his bed, now in the hand that matters. She drives it into the Night King from below, with the specific certainty of a girl who has spent years learning exactly where to put a blade. The Night King shatters. Every White Walker shatters with him. A cascade that goes outward from the Godswood in every direction. The dead commanders exploding into crystals of cold. The connection that holds the army severed at its source. Every white crumbles. In the yard and on the walls, and in the fields beyond the trench, 100,000 bodies fold and fall, and are simply dead. The ordinary dead, without the wrong animation, the way the dead are supposed to be. The silence that follows is absolute. Jon brings Rhaegal down in the courtyard. As the dawn begins to lift, he dismounts, and the dragon settles behind him, and the courtyard is full of the living and the dead and the living, trying to understand which is which. Ghost finds him, the direwolf coming out of the dark from whatever fighting he has been doing, white and bloodied and pressing hard against Jon's side, without waiting for permission. Daenerys lands Drogon, and walks towards Jon across the ruined yard, and they look at each other, and neither of them has the words yet, and neither of them needs them. The living gather in the great hall as the dawn comes up. The question that has been deferred through the battle and the march cannot be deferred any further. Jon is Aegon Targaryen. The journal is in Sam's satchel. Bran has seen the Tower of Joy through the weirwood. Every person in this hall knows it. Jon stands. The hall goes quiet. He looks at the faces of lords who followed him from Castle Black, who fought beside him at the Battle of the Bastards, who stood in this hall and called him king in the north. "You know who I am," he says. "You've known for long enough to have made decisions about it. What you haven't heard is what I'm going to do with it." The room is very still. "I'm not going to claim the Iron Throne," Jon says. "I am a Stark. I was raised one. I fought as one. I have lived my whole life in the North and for the North, and the North is what I know and what I love. The Iron Throne is a seat for someone else to figure out." He pauses. "I am a king of the North. That is enough." The room absorbs this. Some faces that were hard go neutral. Lord Royce looks at Daenerys. Daenerys steps forward. "Then I will pursue the Iron Throne without his claim against me," she says. She addresses the assembled lords with the directness she has always used, stating facts, not asking permission. "I will take back the 7 kingdoms. Jon Snow, Jon Stark, if you prefer, will have my support in the North, not as a subject, but as an ally, a king, and family." She pauses on the word the same way she has paused on it since Dragonstone, testing its weight and finding it holds. Whatever comes next, it comes from that. The hall begins to move, the way halls move when a crisis has resolved, not into celebration, but into the practical business of what needs doing next. Jon goes to the ramparts before the others have finished talking. The sun is coming up over the ruins of Winterfell, pale and cold, the first sun after the long night. To the south, Drogon's shape crosses the grey sky, growing smaller, heading toward King's Landing. Ghost sits at Jon's left side and watches the sun come up. Jon thinks of Ned Stark, a man who kept a promise for 20 years and paid for it in everything. His wife's trust, his reputation, his life on the steps of the Great Sept, with the truth sitting unspoken in his chest, because the boy needed to live more than the man needed to be understood. The boy lived. The promise is kept. Not by silence, by survival. The truth was spoken when it needed to be spoken. And the dead are dead. And the boy born in a tower in Dawn, to a woman who asked one thing of the world, is standing on the ramparts of Winterfell. In the first real morning, Ghost presses against Jon's hand. Jon sets his hand on the wolf's skull and feels, for the first time in as long as he can remember, that his name is the right name. Below, in the ruined yard, a red-robed figure walks out through the gate alone. South, not north, into the grey dawn and the snow. She stops. She lifts her hand to her throat and removes the ruby choker that has held her shape for centuries. She folds into the snow and is still. The purpose is complete. The long night is over. The dawn comes up over Winterfell. The long night is over. The promise is kept. A land of ancient kings and terrible winters, and stories that do not end when the fighting does. Westeros is a place filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey through what could have been, please like, share,